Hello and welcome to Little Learners. In today's video I'm going to be talking to you about keeping to time at Parents' Evening and making sure that your Parents' Evening doesn't run over. How many times have you been the last one at Parents' Evening, still talking to parents up to an hour after you're supposed to have finished? Well, if you're me, never. Now, I'm not making this video to brag at all. I'm making this video to share my methods of how I run my Parents' Evening meetings and how I make sure that I stick to time. Now, I think my way of running a Parents' Evening came about because when I was an NQT doing my very first Parents' Evening, I was so nervous and I was so worried that I was just going to run over and that every single parents' meeting was going to start later and later and later, and I was so worried about keeping to time that I really focused on making sure that I saw everyone at their allocated time and that I did not run over. And when that worked, I just carried on doing that for the rest of my Parents' Evenings. So I made a video and posted it last week about scheduling. So if you haven't seen that, then go and check that one out after this video. I will link it in the description box below. It's a bit shorter, but it does kind of start off how I make sure that I stick to time. Moving on from scheduling, when we actually get to the Parents' Evening, the way I set out my table is very important. If I have a photo of it, which I think I might do somewhere, I will flash it up for you. I make sure that on my table I have a clock so that I can see what the time is really easily. It's right in front of me, but also that the parents can see the time as well. Not to make them feel uncomfortable or anything, but just to let them know that I am really taking seriously the 10 minutes that we have together. You'll notice throughout this video that a recurring theme is that I am very strict on the 10 minutes that I have for a Parents' Evening meeting. Some schools may have longer, which is great, but I've only ever had 10 minutes for a meeting. With my clock, I will also have some water because you need it, you will be talking a lot, and also sometimes you just need a pause or you feel like you need something to do when the parent is talking to you, so you can just have some water. I also then have my folder of what I'm going to be talking about. So I basically have a table of every single child, obviously that extends over multiple pages, and it has several columns in the table. The first column is the child's name, and I also put it in colour group order because it's just easier for me in my head to find them quickly then as well. Then I have some columns for the things that I need to talk about in terms of academics. So I might have how they are currently achieving at the moment. You might have different subjects depending on your school, your year group, what you have to talk about with the parents. It really depends, but it's good to have a column for each of the things that you need to talk about. I will then have a column for the child's next steps so that I can really clearly see what their next steps are. I will then also have a column for any other business. Now, for many children this will be empty, but for some children there might be some things that I need to discuss. Usually this is where behaviour comes into it, and I always write it in a bit of a code because the parents can obviously see my sheet. So I don't want them to see A, what's coming for their child before I've said it, but B, anything about any other children as well. So any other business might be to do with behaviour, it might be something that I've been meaning to catch the parent about and I just need to speak to them about it that day. It might be an answer to a question that a parent's asked me and I've said, oh, I'll let you know at Parents' Evening. So just any other business in there. So I've got everything clearly set out so that I don't have to think about what I need to say because it is all in front of me. I also then have slips for each child with their next steps written on them so that the parent doesn't have to sit and write them down because lots of them go to do that, and I say, oh, don't worry, I have them here, so we don't need to waste time with them writing it down. Give that to them and then they have that to take away with them. So I know the order that I'm going to talk about everything in. Then I ask the parent if there is anything that they would like to discuss. If I ask the parent this at the beginning, they would ask lots of questions about things that I'm going to discuss with them already. So I think it's important for the teacher to say all the things they need to say and then ask if the parent has any other questions. Now, usually these questions will be quite simple ones. However, sometimes parents will ask a question or have a concern about something that you cannot answer or cover in your 10-minute appointment. So if that is the case, it's really important to say, unfortunately, we only get 10 minutes at Parents' Evening, and I think this is going to take a little bit longer for us to discuss, so let's put another date in the diary to meet and have a longer meeting so that we can really discuss this, because Parents' Evening is just kind of for our general overview of how a child is doing, and I'd really like to give this a little bit more thought and make sure that we have enough time to discuss this. So don't feel like you have to now have this really in-depth conversation about a behaviour problem or an issue that a parent has that is going to take a long time. That is for another time, that is not for the parents' evening meeting. Sticking to our 10-minute rule. It's also important to arrange a meeting for another time because it might mean that you need to have someone else in the meeting. So you might feel like in the next meeting it's important to have the Senko there or the head of year there for some reason or something like that. One of the best things you can do is say, I will make a note of that and get back to you. And obviously you are going to make a note and get back to them. Make sure you always have a notebook. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but I always have a notebook on my table as well. So make a note, say you will get back to them later. I think people always feel it's comforting when they see you write it down because they feel like you're taking them seriously, which of course you are. Now going back to being strict with timings, if a parent is late to an appointment, so say you have 10 minutes with them and they turn up 5 minutes into their appointment, they only have 5 minutes left of their appointment. Now this seems really harsh, and of course there are ways you can get around this. So if you have given yourself breaks and you feel like you could give up one of those breaks to have a longer meeting than just 5 minutes, then you can say to the parent, I can meet you for 5 minutes now, but I've got other appointments coming, or at whatever time, in 20 minutes time, I've got a gap and I could see you then instead. So give the parent the option. If you really don't have any time, then you don't have any time and you'll have to arrange to meet them another time. It sounds harsh, but you have to think about the fact that there are lots of other parents waiting to meet you, and as soon as you start seeing people late, that has a knock-on effect. And it's not just about leaving parents sitting in the corridor, because, you know, people can deal with that, but they have probably had to sort out childcare, they have strict timings themselves that they have to get home for, and if you're leaving them sitting for half an hour, they might not be able to do that, and then there'll be more parents that you can't see. So you do have to be very strict about your timings. Parents get 10 minutes, and if they are late, then you can try and see them at certain different times, but at the end of the day, you only have so much time and you're only one person. If a parent is in a meeting and they are being particularly tricky or even aggressive, I've had before, or you tell them that you need to make another meeting for another time to discuss this very, very big problem that they've come to you with, that you've never heard of before, or you need more time to discuss the issue that they have, and they refuse to leave, and they want to discuss it right now, and later is not good enough, but they didn't tell you that they were going to talk to you about this, so obviously 10 minutes was never going to be enough, then after explaining that, you know, we only get 10 minutes, etc, etc, if they refuse to leave, then you just need to calmly leave the room, go and get a member of SLT. Usually someone from SLT will be in the school while Parents' Evening is going on to cover any problems. They should come in and offer to talk to the parents for a little bit longer. So for example, if I was having a particularly difficult meeting and the parent refused to leave, then I would go and get the head teacher. They would come in and say, why don't we go and have a chat, because Mrs. Peach has other parents who she needs to talk with now, but you can come with me and we can still chat. So they still feel like they're being taken care of and listened to, and you don't start running over on your parents' evening. So to recap, scheduling, which I mentioned in my last video, being prepared with your folder and all of the different columns for what you need to talk about, having the child's targets or anything else that you want the parents to take away with them ready to give them so that you don't have to wait for them to write them down, having a clock on your table, very effective, I promise, making a note of anything of concern to parents and saying that you will get back to them later, or if you feel that another meeting is needed, to have a longer conversation, telling them that it would be better to arrange another meeting. After all, parents' evenings are really a general look at how children are doing, their academic achievement, their personal, social and emotional development at school. Even if you're not in early years, I think that's important to talk about whatever year you're in. And remember that you should have other members of staff in the school who you can rely on if you need some more support. So taking all of this, especially the being prepared and being very strict with your timings, you should have no problem sticking to time during Parents' Evening and not being the last one to finish. Parents will be happy, you will be happy, you will really feel like you have achieved something, I assure you, and the whole thing should run very smoothly. Do you have any tips about how to stick to timings that I haven't mentioned? Let me know in the comments below so that we can all share with each other. Like this video if you found it helpful. It really helps out the channel, all of those likes, so thank you for those. Do join the Little Learners family by hitting that subscribe button. There are so many of you now, it's just wonderful to see. So please do come and join the Little Learners family and be a part of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.